It is January 29th, and we're going to do an Ask Me Anything to get more out of your tapping. Welcome to Wednesdays with Gene. I am the eponymous Gene Monterastelli. This is presented by the Tapping Mastery Academy, where I share with you the skills that I use to get the most out of my tapping. Now, this episode is a little bit different. Normally, we are live, and you're getting a chance to join us live right now. And this is actually pre-recorded because right now, I am in Rwanda, participating in the Trauma Summit Rwanda 2025. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you a chance, if you're going to join us live, to get together with the community. I'm going to be checking out the chat after the fact. I got team in the chat box right now. What we're going to do today is we're going to spend some time answering questions. I gave you a chance to submit them. I got 5 really awesome questions that we're going to dive into, and we're going to go from there. But as always, what we're going to do first, before we step into this, before we step into some learning, before we step into being present, what we're going to do is we're just going to take a minute and a half and do a little bit of wordless tapping. So just move from tapping point to tapping point in the order that makes the most sense from you. Just let your fingers do the walking. And as we are tapping along, just notice what comes up. And again, as things come bubbling up, if you want to jot them down, go ahead. Or you can just let them pass and just return back to your body as we move from point to point. Nice big stretch. This is something that I do all of the time. Last week, we were talking about the 5 biggest mistakes that people make when they're tapping. One of those mistakes we talked about was forgetting to tap on small things. And for me, just taking a moment to tap in that particular way, where I'm just tapping wordlessly for a minute, for 90 seconds, I set my timer to do it, makes a huge difference. I really encourage you to do that. And if you're looking for a way to integrate this into your life, just go into your calendar, however you keep track of your stuff, and 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just put a little reminder in there, tap for 1 minute, and to see what that does for you. Awesomeness. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to dive into 5 questions that have been submitted by watchers and listeners and readers just like you. At the end of the episode, I'm going to share with you how you can send me a question so we can cover it in a future episode as well. So, question number 1. What to do if we can't stay focused while tapping? It happens to me often. I just realize that my thoughts are running in all directions. So this is a natural thing to happen because as we are tapping, we're clearing things away. And as we are clearing things away, we start to notice the things that are behind them. You know, if I'm cleaning up and there is a pile in the corner and I pick the pile up to put it in the trash, all of a sudden I notice all of the dust bunnies that are behind that pile of trash. And so when we're doing it, we're going to be distracted because lots of ideas and things are coming up. So the first thing that I do when I know that I'm going to be distracted when I am tapping is I write down the issue that I'm tapping on. I write down the goal of that particular round of tapping. I'm tapping right now to eliminate my overwhelm. I'm tapping right now to clear resistance. And then what I do is as I go through every 3 or 4 rounds, I take a nice big deep breath, I tune back in, and then I go and I read what I have written down. And by reading what I've written down, what it does is it gives me a home base. It gives me something to come back to so that if I'm feeling distracted and I'm wandering out there, I know I come home and then I can go from there. And so as I'm tapping, I might go off in this direction, I come back home, and I go off this direction, I come back home, and I go off this direction, and I come back home. And what this does is it helps me to stay focused in that way. The second thing is just because something comes to mind when we're tapping doesn't mean we need to give it attention. Sometimes something comes up because I need to focus on it, because it's important, because it is valuable, because I need to be present to it. Sometimes things are coming up and I describe them like soap bubbles. I don't know if you've ever been doing the dishes and all of a sudden a little soap bubble comes up, and as it floats up and it just goes away. Sometimes the thoughts that are going through our head as we're tapping are just things that we're bumping into as they release. And for me, whether or not I should pay attention to something or not, I assume if it's something that I need to pay attention to, it's going to come back again. If it's something that's just a soap bubble of a thought, then it's going to go away. So I'm not super concerned with that particular thing. The third thing that I like to do if I find myself in that particular scenario is I just spend a few moments tapping on being frustrated by the fact that I am distracted. As I sit down here to tap, I recognize the fact that I might be distracted as I'm navigating my way through all of this. And I give myself permission to be easy with myself. The distraction are just the thoughts that want attention, and I give myself permission to take them one at a time and to return back to the beginning as I tap. And so when I do that, what I'm doing is I'm releasing the pressure and the stress, because there is the issue that I am distracted. And now that you have identified it as an issue that you're distracted by, it makes a lot of sense that you're not going to have pressure around that. So I do a little tapping before I engage in that particular way. So give yourself a home base that you can come back to. Give yourself permission not to have to focus on everything. Tap on the emotion and the frustration about the fact that you are distracted. If you do those three things, I think it's going to make it significantly easier for you as you're distracted, as you're tapping. Awesome. Question number 2. I've been aware that for quite some time, and I know I need to do it, but I feel very hesitant to make tapping a daily practice. How do I get past this resistance? So when we resist something, creating tapping as a daily practice or anything else, the reason why there's resistance is the resistance is trying to keep us safe. Now, more than likely, when it comes to creating a daily practice, the safety that we're trying to prevent, the way we're trying to keep ourselves safe is we're trying to prevent ourselves from being in a circumstance where we've made one more commitment and we have failed. And so it makes sense that it's harder to engage in that particular way. And so for me, something that is super, super valuable when creating a daily practice is to create a daily practice in a way that is close-ended. And what I mean by this is it's not that I'm going to tap every single day, but I'm going to tap every single day in the month of February. And so by creating a little bit of a close-ended goal to it in that particular way, what it's going to do is if I say I'm going to tap every single day, my subconscious mind knows I'm not going to do that. That at some point I'm going to break that streak. But if I'm in a circumstance, I'm going to tap every day for 28 days, the month of February, then my mind goes, I can do that. I can manage that as I'm navigating my way through that. The other thing I find really useful is to create some structure to it. Let me see if I can find there we go. So if you go to tappingtracker.com, I've actually put together a 30 and 100-day process to help you to do that. The other thing is if you go there, this is absolutely free. If you go there, there's also a 15-minute training video that will teach you how to create and maintain in a more effective way. The other thing that I would do when I'm thinking about something like this, where I'm trying to figure out what's going to, why I'm resisting something, I just take a nice big deep breath and I go, what could go wrong if I do this? And just see what bubbles up. Subconscious mind, I know you're afraid of doing this. What do you think is going to go wrong if I do this? Imagine yourself creating the daily practice. Maybe there's some resistance in your chest, tightness in your stomach. Ask the resistance, ask the tightness, what is it worried about? In the end, the reality is the reason why you are holding yourself back, the reason why resistance exists, is it's trying to keep you safe. And so it's not an issue of pushing yourself through that resistance to do the right thing. Instead, it's about discovering what that resistance is and either creating a structure or tapping for the thing that is holding you back in terms of that resistance. So that's the way I think about that. Number 3. How do I acknowledge success without feeling like a braggart and comparing myself to others? This is such a great question. One of the things that I have been giving a lot of thought to lately is this idea of how, oftentimes we think it's bad to be of two minds. So I could choose A or I could choose B. I'm of two minds. I don't know what to do. I think being of two minds is actually one of the greatest gifts we have as being humans. Because what it allows me to do is it allows me to hold two things that might feel contradictory at the exact same time. So, for example, I can be appreciative of my life and I can want better at the exact same time. Because sometimes if I'm appreciative, I'm going to become stagnant, or if I want better, I'm not being appreciative. So I give myself permission to be of two minds. So when I'm looking at my success, I can do two things. I can, on one hand, appreciate my success, appreciate my hard work, appreciate my growth, appreciate my effort, and at the exact same time, appreciate the fact that I am not tuning into this to compare myself to anyone else. I am not doing this to lift myself up. I'm not doing this to push anybody else down. Because my comparison, my celebration is in comparison to me. For me, when I am competing at something, when I'm competing at a game, when I'm competing at a sport, yes, I am competing against someone else, but I'm less concerned about winning against someone else. I'm way more concerned with how am I improving? How is my strategy improving in the game? How is my strength improving in what is going on? Because it's a direct comparison to myself. One of the things, so I'm a juggler. I spent 20 years being a professional juggler. And one of the things that I love about teaching people how to juggle is I can do a juggling demonstration and I can take 5 juggling balls and get them in the air. Then I can go to teach someone how to juggle. And 20 minutes later, they take 3 bean bags and they get 4 passes. And they are so excited by that particular thing. Because they're comparing themselves to where they were 20 minutes ago, where when we started, throwing a ball from one hand to another in a consistent way was something they had to work on. Now they got 3 balls in the air for a short period of time. That excitement comes from this internal comparison. So when I am celebrating my successes, I'm celebrating my successes in comparison to what I have done, how far I've come, what I am working towards, and then I'm doing it in a way where it's not about anybody else, but it's just about me. Now, as I do that, one of the things that's a really valuable tool is to tune in and use the SOD protocol and to ask myself the question, why am I not allowed to have success? Why am I not allowed to talk about my success? And see the things that come bubbling up. Because allowed is safety in relationship. I don't want to get in trouble with the community. And so by moving through this in a way where I'm being gentle with myself and saying, what am I allowed to do? Where am I allowed to be? I'm going to uncover the stories that are preventing me from engaging what is going on. So anytime we're in a circumstance where we're worried about how other people are going to react to what is going on, take that thing and say, I am not allowed to do this thing because pay attention to the things that come up. And then you're going to find the specific tail enders that are in there for you. So number 1, Compare yourself to yourself. Don't worry about comparing yourself to others because it's not about them, it's about you. The second is see what is the story that is saying why you're not allowed to talk about your success, celebrate your success, embrace your success, show your success off. Because the reality is, in many settings, you being successful is an encouragement to the people around you because you demonstrate that it is possible. So, great. Number 4, I am overwhelmed by the clutter and the amount of my mother's belongings I need to go through. How do I manage this process without feeling so burdened? So, anytime we're in a circumstance where we feel super, super burdened like this, it is probably because we are trying to do too much all at once. I'm guessing in a circumstance like this, you were dealing with a mother who is either no longer living in the home or has died. And so you're now having to go through everything. If I think about it in terms of I have to go through everything, it is impossible for you, more than likely, to go through everything today or to go through everything in the time that you have. So the first thing to do is to break it down into smaller chunks. Instead of going, I need to deal with the stuff, it's I'm going to deal with this closet. I'm going to deal with the desk. I'm going to deal with the paperwork. I'm going to deal with the dishes. I'm going to deal with whatever it is. So by going through in that particular way and making it smaller, it's going to make it significantly easier. The second thing that I like to do when I'm dealing with clutter in particularly is I want the clutter to talk to me, to tell me what the resistance is. And this is what I mean by that. The clutter can't talk. But there is subconscious resistance, particularly when we're dealing with emotional things, getting rid of stuff that is valuable, getting rid of stuff that belonged to someone who has passed away. That can be a really emotional thing. And so because of my age, I grew up on something called Fraggle Rock. Fraggle Rock here in the United States was on the HBO network. It was created by Jim Henson, who did the Muppets, and it was about these creatures who lived in the wall. But when they needed advice, what they would do is they would go to the giant trash heap in the backyard of the house that they were living underground in the walls of. And it was just a giant mound of trash. And because it was a Muppet, it had eyes, it had a mouth, and they would go out there to speak to the trash heap as this oracle. And so that's what I do, is I look at the pile of clutter, I look at the pile of things I need to do, and I give it a voice. And I say, clutter, pile of clutter, if you could talk to me, what goes wrong if I get rid of you? Pile of clutter, what are you afraid of me going through you? Pile of clutter, what goes wrong if I actually follow through on this? And what's going to happen is the stories are going to start come bubbling up. Getting rid of this is getting rid of my mother. Getting rid of this is saying our past is not important. Getting rid of this says whatever. And so by breaking it down into smaller chunks, and then once I've broken it down into smaller chunks, giving myself permission to emotionally engage with what is there by giving the pile voice, it's going to make it so much easier for you to figure out what the emotional blocks are. Then when you know what the emotional blocks are, you can start to tap on them. And once you tap on them, taking action becomes significantly easier. Awesome. Number 5, I'm feeling really good and strong at the start of the year, but how do I maintain this appreciation and strength without overextending myself? So the place that we start with any of these things is if I ask myself, if I continue in this path, what could go wrong? And so in a circumstance like this is, we already have a statement in here, I'm going to overextend myself. So ask yourself the question, take a nice big deep breath, tune into the fear of overextending and going, what proof do I have that I am going to overextend myself? What are the ways that I can tell if I am overextending myself? And so we start to name what is going on because it's so much easier to manage what we name. The other thing, if I'm dealing with something like this, at the end of my day, so I'll even put it on my to-do list at the very bottom of my to-do list because I have a tendency to organize my to-do list in order I want to do things. And so I'll put the very last thing that I look at before I go to the next day is to ask myself an important question. And so at the end of the day, go, did I overextend myself today? Am I overextending myself? And by thinking in that particular way, what it does is it gives me permission to not try and figure out what is the plan I have to have not to overextend myself and know what's going on for the rest of the year. But instead, naming it in a simple, small way so that tomorrow I've set myself up for success where I'm not working too hard. Where today I'm reflecting to see what I'm doing, and then anything that comes up inside of that is a way for us to create space and transformation. So there are 5 really awesome questions that I received. I got a bunch more. We're going to get to them in the future, but I would love to hear from you as we navigate all of this. So if you have a question you'd like us to cover in the future, if you go to tappingqanda.com/AMA, which stands for Ask Me Anything, tappingqanda.com/AMA, you can submit your question there. And when we do a future episode, we'll be doing these every 6 or 8 weeks as a way to get your information, your questions from all of this so that we can engage with them in the future. 2 other quick announcements for you. Next week, we will be back here live. I'm going to be talking about the tail ender grid. This is a really simple grid that I use as a way of figuring out what are the tail enders in front of me. If you print it out, you walk through it, what you're going to do is you're just going to be able to get this really comprehensive way to find all of your tail enders. So if there's something big that you're trying to transform, if you go through this process, this is just going to bubble up all the subconscious resistance that you're facing. It's going to be really, really awesome. I can't wait to share it with you next week. And then finally, on February 8th, I am doing the mystery training. The mystery training, I'm going to be sharing a bunch of the lessons that I'm learning as you're watching this right now, as I am in East Africa with amazing, amazing folks from all over the world. It's going to be super fun. And if you sign up for the mystery training, there's actually a bunch of resources that are already waiting there for you. There is a workbook. There's some tap-alongs. There's some scripts. There's a lot of good stuff that I want to share with you. Go to tappingqanda.com/mystery to get all of the information on that. So that was our Ask Me Anything. That was our little experiment of doing something live when I am not here. If you are watching this after the fact, or you're watching it right now on the screen right now, you're going to see a playlist of all of the past lives that we've done. And I look forward to talking with you and seeing you next week.